Have you learned anything from me?
Oh, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you've told me, I've already kind of known.
Okay, I inserted myself in the middle of a controversial culture wars issue to try to change minds. Things feel more divisive than ever. Every issue is reduced to a war, and it seems people aren't willing to consider changing their minds. But there's a little-known new area of psychology that promises to solve our conflicts. And research tells us that practicing this science can lead to less political polarization, greater personal relationships, and well-being. But in real life, is that actually the case? To find out, I spent a year training in creating good conflict, speaking to researchers.
We're not even talking to each other anymore, and everybody is convinced that they're right.
And people with wildly different viewpoints than myself.
Do you see how that throws me for a loop?
I found most of it deeply uncomfortable and kind of terrifying. But would I do it all again? Yes, in a heartbeat. Because what I learned completely transformed the way that I think. So this new area of psychology, it's called intellectual humility. It's a trait similar to open-mindedness, and at its most basic, it's the willingness to acknowledge that your beliefs may be wrong.
There's all kinds of humility. There's relational humility, and there's religious humility. It just means being humble about your intellect. So being humble about what you know and what you don't know, how smart you are, how smart other people are.
Of course, this is easier said than done. But the benefits of being intellectually humble can be huge. Researchers have found that intellectual humility is associated with greater emotional stability, self-esteem, and life satisfaction. And on a broader scale, it could decrease extremism and susceptibility to conspiracy theories. It can also make you a more persuasive communicator. And I wanted to see if I could harness this science to change people's minds. So I started last year with specialised training and a conference at UC Berkeley, because being open to different ways of thinking can be really hard.
When we feel threatened, when we think about our mortality, when somebody is attacking us for our beliefs, when we're being criticized, all of that will actually make us less intellectually humble. We will tend to kind of close down, we'll tend to dig our heels into our entrenched beliefs.
Think about it. You have all sorts of beliefs, some that you're more open to change and others that you aren't. By default, most of us think we're quite humble, but what tends to happen is we develop a line of non-negotiables, and we put a lot of our tightly held beliefs behind this line. And if you can't accept that those beliefs could be changed, researchers would say you're being intellectually arrogant. Sociologist Alana Redstone calls intellectual arrogance the invisible certainty trap, which can make us look down upon or flat out reject other ideas or positions that are different from our deeply held beliefs. It can make us stop listening. Now, to be clear, having strong opinions can be a good thing. Scientists aren't telling you to be wishy-washy. The key is to strike a balance and to recognise that while you may hold certain beliefs very strongly, you're not infallible.
We have to have some principles, and we want to be accurate about what we know and don't know.
Think back to a time that you changed your mind, or at least grew in your beliefs. For me, a few years back, I switched to a mostly plant-based diet after years of being a pretty big meat eater. The change made me feel great physically, and the more facts I saw about the impact of beef on the climate, the more I was convinced. This made me wonder, if I could drastically reduce my meat consumption, could I convince someone else to? Could I change someone's mind? Okay, so what I want to do as part of this video is to harness intellectual humility to change someone's mind.
Okay.
Is that possible? Do you think that's possible?
There are a few things that you could try to do, which is to assume the best of the other person until you have very strong evidence otherwise.
Approaching a disagreement with humility can help foster meaningful, thoughtful discussions. So how do you do that?
Intellectual humility involves a lot of what psychologists call metacognitive work, right? Where you're not just thinking about the world, but you're reflecting on your own thoughts.
Yeah. Thinking about your own thoughts is difficult, but this practice can keep your bias in check and beliefs in perspective.
The thing is that we think that we change people's minds by sharing them the facts, right? Like the data, and creating a really persuasive argument. And that's actually not how we change people's minds.
I find this bit really hard, but forgoing facts to change minds is supported by research.
Research shows you change people's minds by telling them stories. It's a little bit more work because then you have to say, what about my life and my experiences have led me to believe what I believe?
So I set off to attempt to change a mind using intellectual humility. I planned to tell my story, assume the best in people, and use a technique I learned about called looping to listen and connect with others. And think about my own biases as I respond to conflict. I inserted myself into the middle of the war on beef. The idea that meat is under attack from plant-based substitutes and even protein-rich insects. I spoke with a beef farmer in Texas, though speak with is fairly generous because I kind of lost my voice.
I have so much horse saliva on me right now.
Elvis is the black one over here.
Oh.
This one we call Mrs. Robinson
Okay.
because she's 18 to 20 years old.
This is Ryan, who moved to Texas a few years back to start Freedom Foods Farm and has a YouTube channel about farm life.
Longhorns, you have to remain in the middle.
Okay.
You can't go on the side of them
Okay.
because one little thing, you get shish kebabbed.
Yeah.
But
I'm
you can
probably
see.
good, but we
Okay.
can get some footage of you feeding
Okay,
them.
you want
Okay, I was very nervous chatting with Ryan about plant-based diets, and I think the animals could just tell.
Priscilla. The llamas don't like me.
Okay, how can, somebody that doesn't know my life, doesn't understand what I'm doing, criticize me and say that I'm the problem?
Could I use intellectual humility to move from criticism to curiosity?
When we're talking about this war on beef, who do you imagine, like if it was a war, who were the two sides?
Oh, you have your, liberal New Yorker or LA person on one side.
In other words, me.
Then you have your hard-nosed Republican Texas rancher. It's the coast versus the middle. That's the way I think about it.
So I'm here because you're a beef farmer. I'm a person who believes that people should eat a plant-based or a more plant-forward diet.
Okay.
Can I tell you about my perspective?
Sure.
So I am from a country that is a big meat-eating country. When I was a kid, all we ate was meat. Our dinner every night was like meat and 3 veg, sausages, rissoles, which are like a little Australian meatloaf patty, things like that, steaks, everything. And I didn't really think about it. Like I just went about life that way. And probably about 5 years ago, there was kind of whispers of people going vegan and doing plant-based diets and things like that. So I started exploring that.
Okay, we're starting off well. I'm telling my story.
And there were 2 things that really changed my mind. One was the environmental impact of beef. That really concerned me. Like there's some wild statistics around this. In the American West, there's a drought, like a decades-long drought at the moment. 6% of all of the water use in the American West is for residential houses. 8% is for commercial use. 33% is for food to feed cattle, like just for alfalfa, hay, all that kind of stuff. So it's like a huge impact.
Yes.
Oh no, here I fell into that old trap, front-loading the conversation with statistics.
The other thing was the health effects of having a more plant-based diet. So having a more plant-based diet lowers your risk of heart disease and dementia. So I was like, I'm just going to try this for a while, see what happens. I did it for a while, and the thing that was a game changer for me was it actually changed my mood. And I felt like I was a more kind of stable, like happier, positive person. I could just like manage my emotions better when I was doing the plant-based diet. And that is what like really encouraged me to keep going.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. You find something that works for you, you do it.
Yeah.
There we go.
If you wanted that other side, like the kind of like liberal New York person, to understand something about you, what would that be?
About me?
Yeah.
The way that I manage things here is it has to meet all 3 of these criteria for me to add it to the farm. Okay, One, it has to respect the animal.
Yep.
Okay. By far, my allegiance is to the animal. When it's cold out, when it's hot out, guess what? I have to come take care of them no matter what.
Yep.
And I need to be able to make it to where they're not putting bad stuff in their body. Number two, it has to respect the planet.
Yeah.
Okay. To where we're not going backwards. We're actually improving. We're creating more biodiversity around the farm. We're growing more grasses. We're sequestering more carbon. And number three, it has to be healthy for us to eat.
Yeah.
At a certain point, I realised my entire idea to change the mind of a beef farmer about their very livelihood was incredibly arrogant. I didn't exactly approach it with humility. This whole process made me think, maybe I'm not as humble as I thought.
How intellectually humble am I? Let's find out.
With Eranda's help, I'm going to take this intellectual humility survey, developed for use in research.
Okay, number one question. I complimented the good ideas of those who disagreed with me.
So here you're thinking about a recent interpersonal disagreement you had.
Yeah, probably disagree. Okay, I viewed the challenging of my ideas as an opportunity to grow and learn. I would say 5. I searched actively for reasons why my beliefs might be wrong. 2, even when I was certain about my opinion, I researched information supporting the opposing viewpoint. No. Strongly disagree. I preferred to seek a second opinion from someone who has a different point of view from my own. Sometimes I use new information to reevaluate my existing viewpoint. I'd say 5. I do that quite a lot.
So your mean score on the scale was a 3.27. Which
Out of 5?
Out of 5. So that means you're just above neither agree nor disagree, which means you manifested a moderate level of intellectual humility in the situation you selected.
That's very kind of you to say.
But there's room for growth. There's room for growth.
Finding out that I was basically neutral in intellectual humility was surprising, to say the least. I began to realise that many of us, perhaps even you, are overconfident about how humble and open-minded we are. I'd hit a blind spot in how I view myself. Perhaps turning to vegetables wasn't such a dramatic change. I was already pretty open to it. I live in an area with a lot of vegan restaurants. I drink pea milk. Yet I assumed that I was going to teach Ryan something, and not that Ryan had anything to teach me.
You mentioned that you have this type of farming, which is carbon neutral, did you say?
Oh, no.
You're regenerating the soil?
We're not even sustainable, because sustainable is kind of a
Catchword.
A word. Oh, yeah. And it's funny because, we're going to sustain what we're doing right now. We're not getting any worse.
Yeah.
If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to get worse. Regenerative means we're bringing the grasses back. We're building up the soil again. We're able to capture more carbon than we're putting out by far.
Ryan has a small regenerative farm. He creates his own compost from cow manure and hay.
We're able to capture the nitrogen. We're able to capture all the nutrients by binding it with carbon in the form of hay and producing a compost. Doesn't smell. This used to be
Can
a ton.
I smell it?
Yeah, go for it.
Doesn't smell.
Doesn't smell like anything.
Ryan keeps moving the cows between pastures so he can use the compost on the old pastures to regenerate the soil. In the process, he uses the cows as a lawnmower.
So moving, mobbing, and mowing, and by doing that, we're building up soil. We're allowing the nutrients to be spread out all throughout the pasture, and we're seeing native grasses grow up like you wouldn't believe.
And the cows seem pretty happy.
I'm giving you food. Come on. You want scratches? Okay, fine. Okay.
That's kind of incredible.
Yeah,
Process.
It really is. It's just doing what nature has done for millions of years.
Yeah.
Some claim that regenerative agriculture has the potential to not only lower, but even sequester carbon. Though other experts are more cautious about its potential, and meat critics claim it's not scalable because it requires so much land. How we measure these things is complicated, but regenerative farming, one type of beef, probably has a smaller carbon and water footprint than feedlot farming, the other type of beef.
Before I reached out to you, I didn't know that there were 2 types of beef. And when you see a lot of those stats and things like that, it had never occurred to me that they were taken from a certain type of farm. And I've heard of more regenerative farming practices before, but I hadn't thought of that relating to beef. I was thinking of that in relation to fruit and vegetables and other chickens. And do you know what I mean? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, 2 totally different things.
Yeah.
It's 2 totally different things.
I learned so much, but did I achieve my original goal of changing how someone else thought about plant-based diets?
But have you learned anything from me?
Oh, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you've told me, I've already kind of known because I've been exploring this for 4 years, and I understand where you're coming from with the health benefits of the vegetarian, diet. Because back in the city, which way would I go? I mean, immediately until I found a farmer that I'd trust, I might go vegetarian, and I get it. Maybe not all the way because I still like a hamburger and a steak every once in a while. But I completely understand where you're coming from.
We did find some common ground, but I put in all of this work to improve my own intellectual humility, and I left with doubts that I was actually more humble. And then, after a few months, I saw online that Ryan had adopted a carnivore diet where he mainly eats beef, which was the complete opposite of what I was advocating for. So it was time to check back in with the experts.
After we finished filming everything, I had this moment where I was like, am I an asshole? Perhaps I'm an asshole, and I just never realized it before. Maybe I'm just arrogant.
One of the lessons I've learned as I spend more time studying for an understanding intellectual humility is that you have to be patient with the process. If you want to change someone's mind, the first step is trying to understand where the person is coming from. You should start not from the perspective of I'm here to change your mind. It's more I'm here because I'm curious about why you think the way you think and why the way I think is different.
So at the beginning of this process, I thought I was really humble, and then I learned that I'm not as humble as I thought, and now I feel like I'm adrift in the sea and I don't know how to think about myself. So can we ever truly know ourselves?
What I will say is that the process of self-knowledge, of achieving self-knowledge, is an ongoing process, right? Maybe instead of pushing to answer the question, am I intellectually humble right now, you give yourself some space to say, okay, do I actually have the skills to be intellectually humble and to sort of motivate someone else to be intellectually humble? Let's see.
It's refreshing to know that I have the skills to be humble. We all do. And it's a trait that evolves. Maybe my experience wasn't as bad as I originally thought.
Well, it was amazing meeting you. Can we shake hands?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I met a friend.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree on everything.
I know. Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with today's world is that,
Yeah.
you know what? There's one thing we agree on 99% of things. Okay. The one thing that we don't agree on, it makes us mortal enemies.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's wrong.
Yeah.
I think the end of this conversation sets a really good foundation for subsequent discussions. The fact that you establish common ground, the fact that he understands and to some degree accepts some of your arguments, right?
So my time with Ryan didn't lead me to change my daily diet, but it did open my mind to different ways of thinking. And that's the whole point.
Priscilla, you're a little pig.
Oh, she is.
Our beliefs are fallible, and realistically, they should evolve. Spending time with people who have opposing viewpoints than yourself can be an incredibly humbling experience. I entered this video with arrogance, and now I appreciate my own limitations, and I have this newfound openness to embracing conflict and really listening to other people. You can truly learn something from every person you encounter. And if you want to develop better intellectual humility, these are the things that I found useful. Be curious, because there's always more to learn about any topic. Listen, please hear others out, even if you disagree. Be nice, because mutual respect builds trust. Instead of approaching the world with, let me tell you something, try to ask questions. Or just say, tell me more. It won't always work perfectly, you'll still have disagreements. But what I've learned is that it's definitely worth trying.
You want some more? Oh, yeah. Oh, we're best friends now. Best friends.
Between her eyes and her forehead, she loves that.
Yeah.